Oh my gosh. Welcome back to my live stream. That was hilarious. I just started this a couple of minutes ago and had a massive technological fail. So, yeah, I'm going to start this again. Anyway, um, so hey, doing this live. But anyway, thank you for your patience with my chaos and welcome to this week's live stream. Today, we are actually talking about a really, really important topic, I think, for all of us, but especially those of us in long term relationships, which is how to, keep the love alive over the long haul, which takes intention and it takes energy and it also takes knowledge. Because the truth is that there are ebbs and flows in all relationships. There are times when long term couples feel more connected, and also times when I think we can all feel less connected to our partners. And this is the reality of being in a long-term relationship. And so the fact that there are ebbs and flows isn't necessarily a problem. It's just kind of what happens. The work here is knowing how to reconnect if you have begun feeling more distant. Um, and so, if this is your first time tuning in to this live event, I'll just tell you a little bit about where this is coming from. So, I'm Dr. Lisa Marie Bobby, and my background is well, I'm a few things. I am a licensed psychologist, I'm a certified coach, but primarily I am a marriage and family therapist. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I specialize in working with couples around having healthy, happy relationships. And so, what I often see in couples counseling, marriage counseling, relationship coaching is that one of the primary pain points that many couples have coming in the door is this experience of feeling disconnected from their partner. Saying things like, we love each other, but we don't feel in love anymore. And what do I do about that? I want to feel connected with my partner, but it's not the same. I miss them. I feel lonely. I want to feel excited about them, but I don't. And so again, as I mentioned in the beginning, the fact that this happens can be really confusing for people because they worry that something is really, really wrong. Like, why don't I feel the same way anymore? It can even get to, should I still be with this person? Am I in the wrong relationship because of feeling this disconnection? And that can be really concerning. Again, I think the thing that's most difficult is that because it is so common, you really do need these repair skills in order to come back together again. Because if you don't know how to do that, you will continue drifting apart. And there is actually a point of no return. I mean, not to be overly scary, but I've seen many times people, couples who don't know how to reconnect, so that distance grows and grows and grows to the point where it's difficult to help repair the bond. So, again, just to reiterate, totally normal for long term couples to go through periods where they feel like they've lost their spark. And it's also really important and I think helpful to consider the fact that there is a reason for this that is actually, believe it or not, related to the biologically based nature of love. So I really want to hear your questions about what's going on in your relationship during this live stream so that I can speak to your experience. But just to set this up a little bit, I feel like I need to give you some background information so that my answers to your questions will make sense. And I'm going to hoist my nerd flag right now. I was a biology major in college, and this serves me very well, believe it or not, in my role as a marriage counselor, because love and the experience of falling in love and maintaining love, yes, it is emotional, it is psychological, it is mental, but it is also very physical. There is a biological reality to love, particularly romantic love. So, in the early stages of romantic love, there is like a firestorm of chemicals going off in your brain, specifically the neurotransmitter dopamine. And this a hormone, really, neurotransmitter, it comes with feelings of excitement, kind of craving feelings, joy, sort of euphoria. And this also really causes you to bond to another person in a really powerful and oftentimes really exciting way. And so when we think about the feeling of being in love with our partner, right, we are often thinking about that stage of early romantic love where we feel really excited to see our person. We feel kind of nervous when they're around. We get those butterflies and have crushy feelings for them. We think about them a lot when they're not there, right? They're always on our mind, that kind of feeling. And that is a really fun feeling. And what that does biologically to all of us is that it brings us into close proximity with the object of our affection. It leads to, sexual encounters and a lot of physicality, and that bonds people together. So it's like that early stage dopamine experience is the like when you start a campfire, like it's the lighter fluid that gets everything going. But there is another bonding system that is biologically based that all humans have, and that is our attachment bonding system, which is a different thing than the dopamine exciting romantic bonding system. And so when people are in a longer term relationship, so it's exciting on top, but underneath the surface there's a really strong attachment bond that is building. And believe it or not, that attachment bond is actually more in alignment with like the opiate receptors in your brain. And it is this just very powerful connection that is also very calm. It is strong, it is enduring, but it is not that exciting, like if you have a strong attachment. And so you can think about it. So, like with romantic partners, there's that attachment bond. But like when we're talking about that deep level, that is like the same kind of attachment bond that a parent would have with a child and vice versa. So you can have that strong, let's like a familial attachment, which is different than the romantic thing. So these things both work together. The romantic love typically comes first. People get all excited about each other. They start spending a lot of time with each other, but then there's that attachment bond underneath. And so what you see is that in long-term relationships, after, 2, 3, 4 years, that big dopamine flare isn't happening anymore. And it's settled down into that kind of easy, like, the campfire is going and it's just the coals burning, right? And that's that attachment connection. But the problem is that, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, many couples believe that something is wrong when that is happening. They think that something's wrong with their relationship when they don't feel the way that they felt in the beginning anymore. And it can be very concerning to them, to the point where people wind up abandoning their relationships. They do. They believe they're with the wrong person. They might, end a relationship because they have fallen out of love with their partner. take that to mean the meaning that they make of that is that they should be with somebody else. But then what happens typically is that people will go on to repeat that cycle with the next partner. In the beginning, it feels very exciting and fun and, all the chemistry and the feelings. And then over a period of time, it sort of settles down and then sort of like, well, time to go. And it just begins this cycle where people are kind of chasing the dragon a little bit, because what again they're really experiencing and looking for in their relationships at this point is that dopamine hit, basically. So the thing is that even for couples who've been together for decades and far longer than the honeymoon stage, so the fire has kind of calmed down and it's sort of a slow burn of attachment, even couples who are good with that will also experience different kinds of disconnection and reconnection. And so the experience of being in a long-term relationship, even if you're attached to somebody, it kind of goes like this. Like there's a close together and then a distance and then a reconnection. And again, this disconnection part is not necessarily problematic. This happens to everybody. But what is different is that couples who are healthy and strong and endure and like make it for the long haul, they know how to do this part. They can say to themselves or to each other, where'd you go? Like I'm feeling disconnected right now, and figure out how to bring it back in. And that's why learning how to reconnect is such a core relationship skill. So let's talk about this experience for a second, this like feeling disconnected. And I think, this is especially true for long-term married couples with kids. Like there are periods where it's busy, everybody's working, the kids need so much. And there is so much to do as an adult. I mean, especially if you are a home owner, like weekends are like, we need to remulch the landscaping. I mean, there's just so much that literally needs to be done and maintained. And it can be very hard to maintain a fun and exciting connection with your partner because there's just this busyness and people are tired. Like there's only so much to give. And I think in my experience, that's one of the primary causes of this when there's an ebb and a flow and this disconnection. It's like people just almost forget how to talk to each other and be playful with each other and have a good time together because there's so much of life that's just getting in the way. But again, we need to learn how to do this in order for relationships to thrive and feel fun for a long time. And that's really what we're talking about today, is how you can do that. So I've had a few questions come in already that I'm so excited to speak to. But if there are things that are on your mind related to this or things happening in your relationship, I would love to hear about it so that I can speak to your situation specifically. But otherwise, we'll just roll on to some questions that have come up previously so that I can answer these. Oops. Let's see here. Here we go. So the next thing we're going to talk about, a question that came in, and this came in, but prior to this event, but this is also a scenario that I hear about all the time as a marriage counselor, which is this experience of, I love my partner, but I feel like I'm not in love with them anymore. And so this one listener question, my husband says that he loves me, but he's not in love with me anymore. And we're trying to figure out if our marriage can be saved. I don't know. I'm devastated. I don't know if I can get over what he said. Why does he feel this way? What does this mean? What can I do? Right. And again, this is exactly the kind of crisis that brings a lot of people into marriage counseling or couples therapy. And First of all, this is very, very common. And going back to what we talked about in the beginning, like long term relationships, a lot of times don't feel like they are being madly in love anymore. That is a unique experience to an early stage romantic relationship that changes over time. And again, people transition into this deeper kind of love and attachment that feels like a friendship, a warmth, a fondness, a connection, an appreciation, caring for somebody very much. Like your needs and rights and feelings are just as important to me as my own are, and I would do anything for you. Like you are my life partner. We are in this together kind of feeling, which is really important. But again, if you don't know that that's kind of what's supposed to happen, and you interpret that shift as something is wrong, we're not in love anymore, and we should be, it goes back into this, how do we get it back? And again, so like the male partner in this scenario, this question could think about greener grasses. You know, this wanting this kind of zing and chasing this little dragon can not infrequently be the on ramp to an affair. So not that anything was wrong with a primary relationship, even though people who are cheating want to have the person that they're betraying believe that it was their fault. Frequently, it is not the case. I would say 80% of the time that there is an affair situation, the primary relationship was just fine. It was normal. Perhaps there was some work to do. Maybe that couple had gotten disconnected, but nothing out of the ordinary, and nothing that some knowledge and intention and commitment could not certainly have solved. But again, if people don't know this, it's very easy to develop like crushy feelings for somebody. And that's if people are wanting that, that's what love feels like to them, that exciting feeling. They could continue going in that direction until they create a lot of damage, honestly. So, this is why we need to know how to reconnect. So, first of all, just to the listener's question, is it absolutely normal, and that the male partner in the situation needs some psychoeducation around this in order to understand that this is normal, and to develop, I think, some relational skills, almost in the sense of like emotional maturity, to know that this is a thing that happens, and that part of the dare I say, responsibility of being in a healthy, happy, long term committed relationship is to understand what's going on and then to do something about it, as opposed to just have conversations like, I don't feel in love with you anymore. Something's really wrong. I don't know if we should stay together. Don't, please. So here's what to do instead. Going back to one of the primary, let's see, this one, we talked about dopamine. You can do a few things here, but some of the easiest ways actually to revitalize some of those crushy earlier stage romantic love feelings, with the understanding that it is never going to feel like it felt when you were in the first year of your relationship with anybody. It doesn't matter who you're with. That is an unrealistic expectation of relationships. However, you can actually, by understanding that dopamine is a big piece of the fresh, exciting feeling, do things to boost dopamine with your partner. And these are often things that are physical in nature, or doing things that kind of goose your emotional system. And so simple things like kissing each other on the lips, like having a little makeup out session, can revitalize some of that dopamine. laughing together, doing things that are fun or funny, like going to a comedy club and laughing your butts off together, can actually revitalize some of this. Additionally, this may surprise you to know, but doing things together that are scary and or really anxiety provoking will actually boost dopamine, and if you're doing it together, they will help you perceive each other as being much more sexually attractive again. Nerd alert. There was actually a fascinating study in social psychology, which I absolutely love. But the experiment was that they put college aged participants, young men, sent them off on a swinging bridge, like over a big canyon, many hundreds of feet in the air, like little narrow things, and probably like a little wooden bridge with, if you can imagine, like rope handrails on the side. I mean, like patently dangerous. And the experimental condition is that there was a research assistant, holding the clipboard in the middle of the bridge. And this was a female research assistant. And, asked some basic questions or whatever. And then the young man left the bridge. And when they were off, they were asked a number of other questions, including how attractive they would rate the person who was holding the clipboard in the middle of the bridge. Like, so talking to them when they were feeling really anxious and scared. And then the experimental control is a similar thing, but somebody just walking to a grassy field. There's a research assistant with a clipboard, ask the questions, and then coming back. And so what was really notable is in this study, the participants experienced the research assistant as being vastly more interesting and attractive and romantically interesting in the swinging bridge condition, so that when they were feeling really scared and nervous, and in the presence of this other person, there was that little sparkle. And so you may have heard of things like trauma bonding, or people living through like harrowing life experiences together and finding each other very attractive somehow in the middle of that is part of that. And so again, going back to biology, we're hardwired to connect in scary moments. So knowing that about your attachment and romantic/dopamine system can help you use that to your advantage. So the short answer to your question, try skydiving or something that would be anxiety provoking, which can also include novelty, new things, putting yourselves in unfamiliar, slightly stressful situations together. Traveling can actually be a great way to do this, and for many couples, something that you enjoy anyway. Other things that can revitalize this connection are just sex. I mean, and the one thing about sex to understand is that it's sort of systemic in nature. It's kind of like exercise. Exercise, when you work out, it builds energy. You have more energy after you do it. But many people, when they think about exercising before they have done it, they're like, I'm too tired to do that. I don't have any energy. And so it kind of becomes this catch-22. So like the more you exercise, the more energy that you have, but you kind of have to start doing it. And sexuality is the same way. If you have gotten out of the habit, if you're in a period of more disconnection and you're not feeling as interested in each other, it can really take some energy to get into sexually intimate situations. But the more you do it and the more you have sexual intimacy as part of your life, it kind of re-energizes these dopamine and attraction systems and reconnects you to each other. So it operates in kind of the same way. But even just going back to exercise, I mean, working out together, going on a run or even a walk, something that boosts your energy in the same, proximity to each other will stimulate some of those dopamine systems, as will, just general excitement. So being exciting and fun and playful, like that will stimulate it as well. So those are all fairly easy ways to stimulate that dopamine system to support your sense of reconnection. But that is one piece of it. That's like the physical slash biological part of it. The other thing that you can absolutely do is related more to emotional intimacy, authentic vulnerability, and deeper feelings of connection in the sense of having been meaningful. And so that is also something to keep in mind here, because I think that that is an important part of restoring connection in a long term relationship. And so there are a lot of different ways to do this as well. But for many people, not all people, but many people, having emotionally intimate conversations can be an important part of that. Um, and that is something that is within all of our abilities to do together. I think that the first step is often in just broaching the conversation with your partner. And, we've talked about this on other live streams, but in an emotionally safe way, have a courageous conversation, meaning there's something that is on my mind that's really important for us to talk about. And I would love to, sit down with you, tell you about how I'm feeling. I'd love to hear more about how you're feeling. So we want to use a soft startup and help our partners understand that it's not just the me show. We want to know how they're feeling too. But then to sit down together and broach the conversation around, to even take back what you've heard me talking about today. All relationships have ebbs and flows. I feel like, we're in one of these situations right now. I know it's been such a busy time, and be sure to discuss the context, because there's always a context, and it would be counterproductive for in that conversation for your partner to feel blamed, or like you were insinuating that it was their fault specifically. But say, it's been a busy time. I know we've both been so busy. The kids are a lot. You've been working so much, and I feel like this has started to take a toll on our connection. And I miss you. I would love to feel like we're, in this life space together, and that we were more connected again. And I have some ideas about how we could do this. I feel like we need to make some more time for us, maybe to have some adult time when the kids aren't around, but also even just having conversations with each other. I mean, I'd love to hear more about what's been going on with you. I would love to feel like I could talk with you about some of the things that have been going on with me, and build that into your life somehow. If it is a date night, or if it's, going on a walk after dinner or in the morning, I mean, whatever it is, but build in some time to be together and have more emotionally intimate conversations. And these happen through asking open-ended questions that make your partner dig a little bit deeper to answer. So, what would you say your biggest pain point is with your job these days? Or where do you want us to be in 5 years? I mean, like, these kinds of questions. And it's weird because we're not necessarily talking about the relationship in these moments, but this is how we can restore this friendship bond and the sense of emotional intimacy that is another really important part. Additionally, it takes energy and intention. And I think for many of us, it can feel different and new, but also a little bit anxiety provoking to be really vulnerable with people and be authentic and talk about how we are really doing. And so, even those conversations can stimulate some of that dopamine system. But additionally, there's a sense of emotional connection that really stimulates that attachment bond as well. So, long-winded answer to your question, but I wanted to give you the the honest answer and give you some practical ideas and things that you can hopefully use in your relationship and this experience, starting with helping your husband understand that, yeah, we're in a disconnected place right now, and let's work on this together, as opposed to letting him, continue down that we're not in love train of thought. So. Okay, so thank you so much. And I am seeing some other wonderful questions come in that I really appreciate, and I definitely want to answer. So I'm going to clear this out of the way, and let me just answer some questions here. And someone mentioned, I fell for somebody else big time, and because I wasn't feeling that for my partner, I assumed I wasn't in love anymore. Yeah, so it sounds like you can really relate to what I was saying. And depending on the situation, I mean, like if you were in a dating relationship and felt more attracted to somebody else, it's one thing. I think, though, in a committed long-term relationship, which is what we're really talking about today, and so assuming that, either there's a commitment or you are living together, you have children together, these are things to manage more carefully. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much for sharing. It sounds like you can relate. So another person wrote, I've been married for 26 years. For several years, I've told my husband that I love him, but I wasn't in love with him, not knowing the level of loves. He recently had an affair and now seems ambivalent. Yeah, I totally understand that. It sounds like it was a confusing period for both of you, that you perhaps didn't understand what was happening. And listen, we are not socialized or taught to understand how love really works and what it is and what is normal. And so without having that information, we are totally left on our own to try to make sense of our own experience. And it is totally understandable that you would not be having feelings. And hey, let's also get real. I mean, as somebody else who's in a long-term relationship, I mean, my gosh, my husband and I have been together since the 90s, right? Like, in addition to just feeling disconnected, there can also be other things that creep in, frustrations in the relationship, resentment, unresolved conflict that can also become barriers of connection, right? And that you have to work through. So there can really be a lot in the middle. And I think many times what happens in people's minds is, well, then I must be with the wrong person. And I think what I'm hearing in your story is that there was damage that was done, that maybe you pulled away, and, that he was perhaps feeling uncared for. And I'm sorry that he wound up having an affair. That is always incredibly hurtful. But you're also saying that he sounds ambivalent right now, meaning, that he perhaps isn't sure what he would like to do. I will tell you, one thing that you could consider in this type of situation in order to get clarity around what are we doing and find a path forward again. There's actually a very specialized type of couples counseling / couples coaching called discernment work. And this is a specialized type of relationship coaching. If you're interested in going down this path, I just want to tell you, you'll look for somebody who has qualifications in this area, or for a group practice, like, so a growing self. Like, we have marriage and family therapists who have done trainings in discernment work. But how discernment work works, I guess, is that it is a series, it's a short-term type of model, which with a series of sessions with each partner that really clarifies their level of commitment to the relationship and mobilizes the motivation to make this relationship good again if that motivation is there. It's not always there. Most of the time it is, though. People just don't know how to access it. And then from those conversations, talking about specifically like what would need to be different in order for this relationship to feel good for both of us again. And are we willing to do that? Because the other thing here is that, especially in the aftermath of an affair, it is a lot of work at like emotional labor to restore these kinds of connections. And so, the other thing that happens in discernment work is two people talking about with clear eyes, like, this is what it's going to take. And are we both committed to doing this together, or is it just one person wanting to do this together? Because if that's the case, it's not going to work. So by the end of discernment counseling, discernment coaching, it is not relationship repair work. The goal is that you will have clarity around, is there commitment, is there motivation, and what do we need to do? And that is where discernment work stops. Then you can begin marriage counseling, coming into marriage counseling with motivation, commitment, and a plan, which means that marriage counseling is much more likely to be successful. I will tell you, even marriage and family therapists have not had this kind of training and discernment work. And so if two people in the type of situation that you're describing show up for marriage counseling, the primary assumption is that, yes, everybody wants to do this, and we are here to repair the relationship. And if you haven't done that kind of clarification work first, it will sabotage marriage counseling because one person is ambivalent. They might be leaning out of the relationship while the other person is leaning in. And under those circumstances, couples therapy will not work. So that's why it's important for you to do this discernment work first to find out, what you have to work with, and then whether or not it makes sense to move forward into marriage counseling. So I don't know if that was a question or that answered your question or your comment, but I hope that having that perspective is helpful. One of the things that often really, really bothers me is that, I talk to people all the time who have just such a sincere interest in working on themselves or working on their relationships, and don't know how to find the right kind of partner in that growth, the right kind of professional to really help them in the way that they need to be helped. And really, people don't understand that there are so many differences between types of providers, different kinds of qualifications, different kinds of work that you can do. And because of that, I think it's so easy for people to get involved in the wrong kind of work, genuinely thinking that it's going to be the thing that helps them. And they wind up wasting so much time or so much money, or wasting the opportunity to, especially when it comes to like repairing a relationship. Anyway, so that's why I'm happy to have these live streams and be able to talk about some of this with you so that you can be informed, empowered consumers. This is what I'm looking for. So anyway, thank you for letting me know what's going on and for your question. And we have a little bit more time, and so I'm going to answer as many questions as I can before our time is up. So if you haven't asked one yet, I hope you do, and we'll just keep going. So let's see. Let's see, M brought up, this is a great one. What if your partner is unable to have emotionally intimate conversations? This is fantastic. And I think that this is something really, really important to talk about. And there are a few different things that you can do. First of all, to simply have a courageous conversation about how you are feeling and about the fact that you would like to have more emotionally intimate conversations, that would really be meaningful to you, and that is kind of the coin of your realm. That is one of your love languages, and it's something that you would like to work on in your relationship. In this conversation, though, I would also advise you to be really curious about what is going on with your partner. So in your question, he is unable to have emotionally intimate conversations, and be like, is that true? Or why, why would that make sense? What is it about your life experience that, that's not something that it seems like you can do? Or is that just not something that you can't do with me? I mean, and like not in an accusatory way, but in a genuinely curious way. And I will tell you, just super transparently, in these kinds of conversations, especially if there is a skills deficit in one partner, or if they come from a family of origin culture where emotionally intimate conversations didn't happen and they literally never learned how to do it, they may feel very threatened by this conversation. They might feel shame or bad, like you want and need something from them that they literally don't know how to give you. And so, what can happen here is that it can elicit this sort of stress response, like and a defensive response that can shut down the conversation, basically, or make it feel like it turns into a conflict, or like avoidant behaviors, whatever. So I am just offering that to help you understand that is often the reason why people come in to good couples counseling or relationship coaching, is because to have somebody like me sitting in the room, we hold the door open so that people are able to hear and take in what the other person is saying without, having this like automatic response that shuts things down, is one of the things that happens in good relationship work. And so I just offer that because to broach this with your partner, in order to be able to work on it, there needs to be that mutual understanding that this is something that's important, and a mutual commitment that this is something that we're agreeing that we want to work on together. But in order to get to that place, there might need to be some supportive, like almost a mediator to have that. But if you are trying this on your own, I will advise you to be just really emotionally safe and super receptive to how they feel or what their experience is. And again, so one of the interventions that I typically use as a marriage and family therapist, there's a certain type of relationship assessment called a genogram that is so powerful. And it oftentimes takes, 2 or 3 sessions to do together, but it's where we're actually drawing out both partners' families of origin. So, where they are, their parents, grandparents, sometimes going back other generations to talk about, cultures of origin, what the culture of the family was like, how people talk to each other, how do we handle conflict, how do we show love and affection, how do people feel connected to each other. And, I think many times, especially in kind of a whitewashed culture, it can be easy to assume that culture is something that other people have. And I think that this can actually be very true in a lot of white families or white identifying people. But the fact is that everybody has a culture of origin, and like where your people came from and how they related to each other, and whether or not there was some generational trauma back there, or alcoholism and your grandparents, like it actually carries forward in the way that people relate to each other, how they experience love, what feels normal to them. what their expectations are of what healthy relationships should look like. And it also informs our differences because, different people have different needs around connecting through conversation. So, for example, many times women will feel like the avenue of emotional connection is by talking about things and sharing experiences and having these emotionally intimate, vulnerable conversations, which is fantastic. And that is part of how people bond fully. But I think, and especially sometimes women can not understand how their male identifying partners can have very different but just as valid ways of experiencing love and connection. It might be through activities, it might be through sexuality. And I think it's very important, especially when you love someone, to understand that other people's ways of being are just as valid as our own. So, because I think because we all grow up in cultures and have different ideas and expectations about the way things should be, it can become very easy to develop this supremacist orientation in our relationships with our partners, where we are right and good and our worldview is correct and theirs isn't. And so, then that turns into this dynamic that can start to really erode a safe attachment bond if somebody feels shamed or less than. And so really, I think it's very important to be curious and to have these kinds of conversations, ideally facilitated by somebody who can help you have meaningful conversations and kind of bring to the surface all of these different things. But from there, with that understanding in mind, if you are able to create this mutual understanding as a couple, that may involve your partner being like, what? My partner really needs to have these kinds of experiences with me. This is her love language, and this is something that I need to work on in order to help her feel loved and cared for by me. So he needs to get into that space, and then from there we can start building bridges to the center. And I will say that on the other side, too, perhaps you learn something about your partner in the way that he experiences love that is perhaps different from yours, but learning how to operate in a way that he feels really connected and respected and understood by you. So that's building the bridges to the center, is that you each start working on yourselves in order to be a more loving partner to each other. So that is my answer to your question, which may be more than you bargained for, but I wanted to give you the truth. Okay, let's see. We have time for maybe one more. Oh, and one of our original posters mentioned I downloaded Gottman couples cards to try to reconnect, and he says they feel forced. I've tried comedy shows, but he seems to just want to be out with his friends post affair. And scrolling, okay, and so this is a follow-up question from Rebecca, who the original question was that you had felt out of love and now your husband had an affair and now he is ambivalent. And so what you're saying, Rebecca, is that it sounds like you have been doing things to try to get closer to him and restore that connection, but it feels like he's not willing to get back in the pool with you. And so going back to what we were talking about related to discernment work, and again, I don't know you, and forgive me if I'm not understanding all of the details or the context, because I may be assuming things, but my assumption is that you are the partner who is leaning in. You are in the space of like, come on, let's go to a comedy show, let's work on this. He, though, is leaning out right now. So it's like feels like you're kind of chasing him a little bit. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to do this. that needs to be listened to and respected, because in this kind of dynamic, the more you chase and try to get him to go to comedy shows with you, he will continue going further and further away. So I would strongly advise you to get into discernment work. Again, this is something that you can do through Growing Self if you would like to. If you go to our website, go into the relationship counseling sections, and all the way at the bottom of that page, let's see, it's couples counseling and coaching. Down at the bottom of that page, like, we talk about a lot of different specialized services that we offer through our group, like financial counseling for couples, long distance relationship therapy, affair recovery is another piece of this, but discernment work. And you can just read more about what that is, how it works. If you go to the blog at growingself.com, go to the love collection, and then from there, so we have so much content on our blog, from the podcast. I have it organized. You know what? I might even actually be able to share my screen with, well, I don't know if I can or not. Anyway, but if you go to the love collection, you'll find a sub collection called Relationship Clarity. And there you'll also find a number of articles and podcasts on the subject of discernment work, so that you can educate yourself more about what's going on. And I think we probably even have one about like do's and don'ts, and especially like for that leaning in position, like it can be easy to unintentionally make things worse if you don't understand the dynamic and how to rectify it. But I'm hearing that you are motivated to try to repair this, and I really hope that by getting the right kind of support for your relationship, there is hope. But in order for it to work, your husband needs to reconnect with his own motivation and commitment and get back into the ring with you to do that. But I don't think he's there right now, which is frustrating. And I'm sorry that that's true. Okay, you guys. Oh, and there were some other questions that came through. This is so wonderful. I really appreciate this conversation. So we're out of time for today, but I am going to read through the rest of these questions, and, maybe we can do a podcast episode on some of these topics, because obviously there's a lot going on in your lives, and that's always what I'm doing when I'm making my podcast. Like, I want it to be about you and what is important to you and going on in your life. So we will continue this conversation. But anyway, thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and I will talk to you guys hopefully soon. Okay, take care.